Good man. Well, it's good to be here. It's good to be back on campus, and every time we get a chance to come back, we really enjoy it. Is there anybody from the Lake Oswego stake here?
I was born there.
You were born there? Good. Excellent. Okay. Now I can say whatever I want because nobody will tell on me back home. That's really what I want to find out. We're going to talk today about prosperity because ultimately that's one of the driving forces of why we want to get into entrepreneurship. But first, I'm grateful for the Rollins Center and for the opportunity that I have to be able to have a pathway to share some of the knowledge that I've gained, share some of the mistakes that I've made through mentoring, and also share some of the knowledge that we've learned on what it takes to create successful business ventures. So we really do have a blessing to have this center here on campus and have an opportunity to be able to learn, to be able to share and exchange information. So if you get a chance, if you haven't been by the center, make sure you swing by and just say hi and introduce yourself and talk about some of your goals. And they'll pair you up with a number of guys like me or gals like me, and then we can figure out how to help you for this next phase of life. So I'm going to talk about prosperity a little bit through work and through the principles of work. And first I'll go through my personal story. So I bring these up because I'm like anybody else. I've got one of those awkward baby pictures, but this baby picture is actually one of my favorite ones because this is where I'm 2 years old and my face really hasn't changed much. And so people that know me and work with me, I still end up looking at stuff and picking things apart and playing with things. I suppose that's why I'm in the industry that I'm in. The middle picture is me about age 13. The reason why I share that is because I have this firm belief that everybody is still holding on to something that they held on to when they were 13 years old. It's that thing that keeps you from either going up on stage, it's that item that keeps you feeling like you're maybe not worth enough, or maybe you're not good enough. It's that thing that gives you a little bit of fear. Well, I kind of joke with people, but I trace that back to when you were 13 or 14 years old. So anytime you have a fear about something, it's usually because we created this awareness of our surrounding, and all of a sudden we're thinking, wow, maybe I can't do this. Maybe I'm not good enough for this, or maybe I can't head forward. We want to help you to blast through that old 13-year-old self. We want to be able to help you to realize you can jump out of your shell, and you're just as good or just as amazing as anybody else out there. You can do extraordinary things. One on the far right just shows that I've always been a BYU fan. This is a picture that I took on my first few months of the mission. I'm wearing, as you can see, a BYU shirt and a BYU cap. So we are a Cougar household, and no matter what happens to any sports teams, we are still a Cougar household. I want everybody to know that. Okay? My BYU experience, pretty simple. I even pointed out me in the picture. As you can see, I've changed a lot from the picture. This is me in Stover Hall with a bunch of buddies. The reason why I bring this up is because in this picture, I have some very close friends, and we have stayed in contact since 1994 when we showed up as freshmen. In fact, we're in so much contact that the 7 of us are still on a group me chat, and we've been chatting and emailing for 23 years on a weekly basis. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later, why that support network is important, that you have that support network outside of your regular circle or sphere of influence. My family, Scott introduced my beautiful wife, Jenny. We met here at BYU. Traditional story, right? You're walking down the mall. You're about to get something at Chick-fil-A, and your roommate says, hey, I bet you can't get her phone number. And I say, sure, I bet I can, because she's working at some shop in the mall. Everybody does that, right? It's pretty common. No, it's not that common. But the idea is we met here we were both going to BYU at the time. We actually did meet at the University Mall. It's kind of an embarrassing story, but I don't care because look at the results. So I'll take that embarrassing story at any time to have the life that we had. Okay, a couple of questions to ponder. What does my support network look like? I want you to think about these as I'm talking today and beyond. These are good questions to ask because a lot of you are here saying, do I want to go into business? Do I want to be a partner? Do I want to be an executive? Do I want to found a company? What do I want to do? What does my support network look like? Now, the support network, give me some examples of your support network. Who are they? Yell it out. If you yell it out, then you get some merchandise.
Old companion.
There you go. Old companions. Good. Family, wife, roommates, friends. Good. Professors. Excellent. Okay, you've got people that have gone before you. You've got people that have been through these obstacles. You've got people that are out there. So what does my support network look like? Okay, my support network, I had a very strong family support network. I had a very strong extended family support network. My wife's father was actually entrepreneurial, and so he gave me some guidance early on and helped me to navigate some of the obstacles that I had. Why do I want to stay in business, or why do I want to be in business? You will find one of the challenges today in business is what we call CEO exhaustion or founder exhaustion. And maybe Scott can speak to this a little bit more. But it used to be that when you would head down a path, and this isn't unique to entrepreneurship, think about your grandparents or great-grandparents that bought a house when they were 35 years old. They stayed in that house, they raised kids, grandkids, and they probably passed away in that house. And you remember going to that house. We're a generation now where we're always shaking and moving. We're always kind of looking on the other side saying, what do I want to do next? Like, what's the next thing that's out there? We want to make sure we're getting the best opportunity out there. So I asked this question, why do I really want to be in business? So why do you want to be in business? Why are you even interested in this? Money, go ahead, say it. I want to be money. Oh, nobody's in it for the money? Wow, that's pretty good. Okay, I got one for the money, good. What else? What's that? Lifestyle. Say more about that. What? Freedom, right? So we want the money or we want the freedom. Why else? I don't want to build someone else's dream. Okay? You want to be creative. You want to create something. You want to have an opportunity to have a canvas. You want to eradicate poverty. Excellent. Now we're getting into some of the social reasons, right? To get in there, the ways to give back. Okay? All of these reasons, these desires, are actually going to dictate your stamina that you have. So if you're in it for the money, you'll probably be in there for 12 to 18 months. That's usually what happens. Why? Because those are the hard years. That's really tough. And businesses cycle. Even if you're in there and you think you've made it, there are cycles that happen all the time in business. If you're in there to eradicate poverty, if you're in there for the lifestyle, for the freedom, to create, to build a canvas, you got to find your reason to be in there. That will determine your stamina. Okay? What's my end game? I ask people when I sit down with them, one of the first questions I ask is, what's your exit strategy as you start this business? And they say, well, what do you mean? I haven't even gotten it off the ground. I said, well, that's true, but what's your exit strategy? Because what's going to happen is as you head down a path, you're going to think you're heading to this particular pathway. And as you head down that path, there are distractions all along the way. And you as the founder, you as the executive, you as the visionary, have to figure out what's the end game. Where are we going? That end game may not be necessarily a destination. It may not be a time frame. You know, it could be something like, I want to hold this for 5 years, and then I want to sell it. You know, why do you want to sell it? What's the end game? You know, I want to hit a particular goal. I want to be able to pass it on to something else. I want to be able to spin it off and do something else with it. So what's my end game? That's always important to remember, because along the way you don't want to miss opportunities, and you also don't want to get distracted by opportunities. Okay, and then finally, when do I know if enough is enough? It's a common question. I was going to put up a bunch of quotes up here from Buddha and Confucius and all these things out there, but essentially that's the question. When is enough enough? Because I can tell you from my experience, let me tell you where my goals were at the very beginning. My goals were, I want to go to law school, I want to be an attorney, I want to study political science, this will be great, I'll be this amazing attorney, and I'm going to make $62,500 a year. It's pretty good, right? At the time, I thought this would be great. One day, someday, I would like to make, you ready? 6 figures. That was big back then, right? 20 years ago, make 6 figures. That was about it. I knew at that point that that would be enough for me. Well, something changed, right? You get married. I won't go down that path. You have kids, you have responsibilities, you continue to grow, and your goals start to change. And you realize, wait a minute, maybe I need a little bit more. Maybe I need to start blessing the lives of others. Maybe I need to do a little bit more to give back. Maybe I can do something different. And goals change. But you've got to find that balance of when enough is enough. I see a lot of entrepreneurs that you look at them and they're just going so fast and so far that they start losing everything. Wheels come off. You've got to be careful with that. You've got to know, when is enough enough? At what point is that enough? Okay, so these are some questions to ponder. Will you think about these as we're talking? We can talk about them a little more in the Q&A. All right, let me talk about my first follower, and then I'll give you some history and some background. So I consider this one of the most fundamental and crucial aspects of a successful business. And that is the first follower. This is my first follower. He's a pirate. Okay? Chris, why don't you stand up for a second? So this is Chris Jensen. What's that? You're not in your costume. I should have had you come in your costume. Yeah. So this is my first follower. Thank you, Chris. So Chris is important because Chris is the CEO of Namify right now. Now, when Chris started, how much were you making when you started? $6.50 an hour. Chris was the first employee that actually believed that we were going to do something great 15 years ago. So he was the first follower, the first believer. Everybody else came in and said, this is a job. Sure, I get an hourly wage. I can help you out. I can help build that website. But Chris came in, and he was the first follower and the first believer. So why is that important? Because it's easy for me to go in and say, I have this great business, and I can do great things. But it's a lot better for Chris to go in and say, we have this great business. We can do great things. Listen to what Bryan's doing. Listen to what he's putting together. He was my first follower. He could sustain that. He could help build that. So I find that one of the fundamentals that you have to have is that first follower. Okay, my first casualty. I thought about dozens of pictures I could put up here for my first casualty. And people say, like, well, what's a casualty in business? Well, a casualty is firing your friend. A casualty is getting rid of that partner that you were mission companions with that just isn't pulling their weight. Your first casualty is making a decision of, do I serve the client or do I serve these two employees right here? Which one do I do? There's a casualty there. My first casualty, my toughest experience that I had was the first time that somebody told me that I had lied to them. That was really hard for me. It was really hard for me to say, Bryan, you said that if I came and worked for you and I jumped in on this, that I could do some great things. And I did say that. Yes, you can do some great things, but you have to work. You have to put in the effort. This isn't going to be easy. You have to put in the time. You have to measure results. You have to build a plan. You have to set goals. And the first time after a few years that one of my friends at the time said, this just isn't working out for me. That was my first casualty. That was really hard. So entrepreneurship, you're going to have casualties along the way. It's going to be difficult. And so I learned from it. I learned to make sure, and Chris can attest to this a little bit more. Now I'm very, very careful. Now I tell people when you come and work, they say, can I be successful? And I say, well, I guess you can, probably, but it's entirely up to you. Like, I'll give you the fertile soil, I'll even give you some seeds, and I'll give you the water. I'll come back in a year or two, I have no idea if you'll put a garden together. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but I know the principles are sound, and I know that it's possible. Okay, let me talk about my approach to time. And I'm going to get into 3 principles that we'll talk about. We'll talk about time, as far as the way that I view time. We'll talk about validation of your business model a little bit, and how I view that. And then we'll talk about prosperity. So let me talk about my approach to time. There we go. So I learned something about time, and I'll share it in terms of this experience. Early on, I was about 4 years into the business, and the business was starting to generate a little extra cash. And so with that little extra cash, we decided, let's jump into some real estate ventures. And so I started picking up a condo here and a condo there, and I started getting into the rental market. If any of you rent from us, I hope we're doing a good job. I don't think you do. I won't ask. Shouldn't ask. Okay. We're doing good. So Started buying up all these properties. Seemed simple enough. And I had a friend of mine that was getting ready to move overseas. And he said, Bryan, I'm getting ready to sell my house. And I actually was kind of joking with him a little bit. And I said, well, if you can't sell it by the time you have to go overseas, give me a call. I'll buy it from you. And I'll get a pretty good deal on it. Well, so he remembered that conversation. And 4 months later, I had sort of not remembered the conversation as well as he remembered it. He said, hey, we're packing up everything. We've shipped everything in a container overseas, and we're leaving next week. And when I get to my destination, I don't really have any money to get my container out, and we don't really have much money to start, so I really need to sell my house. And I said to him, I don't know how to buy a house in a week or two because I need to go get a loan. I need to go figure out, the down payment. There's a lot of work that goes into it. How long does it take to buy a house? How long?
6 months.
6 months? What do you say? How long does it take?
A month.
A month? Okay, it was at this time where I learned all of a sudden that I can affect time. And so he called me and said, hey, I've got to close on this deal. So I started making phone calls. I called a bank, called a loan officer, I called the loan officer's boss, I called an appraiser. I started calling everybody. And we were actually out of town. We were in Florida visiting my wife's family at the time. And I just started making phone call after phone call after phone call. And when somebody said, yes, we do have your application, I would say, where's it going from here? They would say, well, it's going on so-and-so's desk. And I said, well, can I have their number? I would call that person and say, hey, the application's coming your way. As soon as it lands on your desk, can you do what you need to do with it? And can you call me? And I worked through the process. So we got back from Florida. So 7 days later, we were sitting in an office and we were closing on a house. Now, something that meant for me is I realized, why in the world does it take 2 months to close on a house? Or why does it take a month to close on a house? That changed my perspective of time. And I realized most people think in terms of 8 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 5. They think in terms of 7 days a week. They think in terms of 30 days. You can do a lot with your time. You don't have to wait. You don't have to do the traditional things. I'll give you another example. So I get people all the time that'll say, I'm waiting for, this is kind of a terrible word in our organization. When people say they're waiting for something, what are we actually waiting for? So we're sensitive to this. We ask questions like, what are we waiting for? Well, I'm waiting for so-and-so to do blank. Well, how can we help so-and-so move the ball along? How can we help move things a little bit faster? How can we get things going? How can we hit our deadline? We used to do these 90-minute planning sessions or 90-day planning sessions at work where we'd sort of talk about what's going to happen in the next quarter. And then we'd go through the list and then we'd ask ourselves the question, how do we get this done in the next 90 minutes? How do we get these same things done in the next 90 minutes? And we would just ask ourselves that question over and over. And some people would hem and haw. Most people would say, oh, that's not practical, that doesn't work. I'm not able to do that. But we would go in and say, no, we can do this in 90 minutes. We can do this a lot faster. We can be a lot quicker with it. And then finally, I tell people, I don't speak Mandarin, but I realized a couple of years ago, I decided to start taking some Mandarin. Those that speak it understand how difficult and challenging it is. But I realized I got a tutor once a week. And I realized they would come over for an hour. I would tutor a little bit. And after a year went by, I had about 40 hours or 50 hours under my belt. And I thought, oh, okay, I've got some basic conversational Mandarin down. And then it really bothered me. Why did it take me an entire year to do 40 hours of work? Like I had fallen subject to my own critiques, right? Why did it take me that long to do it? When I realized I could just spend 40 hours a week and do this. Seems simple, right? You jump into the MTC, you learn a language, you dive in, you can do it a lot faster. Okay? Now, before I get into my next topic of validation, let me tell you some stories a little bit about the company, how we started. And I'll go through a timeline. I do this in the middle so that we can kind of understand a little bit of perspective on each side. So the year was 2000, and in the year 2000, I had started a company with my wife called 'Cause I Care Packages. We had this great idea. I was teaching at the MTC, and I thought, it's kind of a mess to be able to get packages to the MTC. Why can't we just have people call in or jump online and purchase packages? We'll assemble all the packages at home, and I'll just bring them up during my shift here at the MTC. Seemed like a decent idea, right? It actually paved the way for some of these other services that came out a few years later. But I was sitting there as a senior at BYU, starting this business, getting this off the ground. At the same time, we were getting married that summer. And I was thinking, okay, I've got to figure out, how to make some money with this. So we put our care packages together. We went down to Sam's Club at the time. We bought, $3,000 worth of, ultimately, we bought $3,000 worth of candy and snacks and everything else. And we filled this extra room at our apartment or our house with it. And it was great because within 3 weeks, we had set up a website. We went up on Wednesday afternoons and we would pass out little leaflets across from the temple, and we'd say, hey, as people were coming out of the MTC drop-off at the time. And I thought, this was a great idea. So we did that for 3 Wednesdays, and then after our 3rd Wednesday, we had a security guard come up to us, and BYU police say, what kind of paraphernalia are you guys passing out here on the curb to these Mormons that are leaving the MTC? And so we had to kind of backpedal and realize what we actually looked like as we were passing out pamphlets to people as they were leaving the MTC. And I said, no, we're just selling stuff. And they said, so you're selling stuff on BYU property and church property? And I said, okay, that doesn't look good either. So we're actually not selling stuff. And they said, well, part of your MTC, I actually said to them, I said, I just work at the MTC. And they said, well, part of your MTC agreement is that you won't sell anything or peddle anything. And so I thought, okay, I'm in trouble. Well, luckily we had made a few $1,000s. We paid off most of our inventory that we had. And then somebody else came along, and we sold the business, I think for a couple $1,000s at the time, partially because I went home that night and I couldn't sleep. I thought, I'm a terrible person. I've broken the law. I've made this huge mistake. Like I'm gonna get I was teaching at the MTC, and so my job was in jeopardy. I was having all these problems, just sleeping. I had all this anxiety. I said, I am not cut out for business. So what did I do? Talked to some people in my ward and stake, found a buyer. They bought it off of us. We kept all the inventory, and we actually lived off of the inventory for the rest of the year, for the rest of the senior year. So what did I learn from that? I sat in my political science classes, and as I would sit there and write these 20 and 30, anybody a political science major? I got a few in here, okay? So I'd sit there, I was technical writing, and I'm doing my capstone, and I'm talking about like why Taiwan should be a separate nation state, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, that was really cool to do a business. But then I thought, no, I've got to stay on the path. I've got to stay on this path. I'm doing political science. I'm heading off to law school in a few months. I've got to stay focused. I'm going to make my 62.5. That's right. I had that in my brain. Well, the other thing is my in-laws were expecting me to be an attorney, and so they gave their blessing for my wife to marry me. They said, oh, that's great. They had bragging rights. They would say, oh, our daughter is marrying a new aspiring attorney. Anyway, so long story short, I started getting into what I liked doing with web design and search engine optimization. And as I was doing search engine optimization, I was helping some clients out and I was helping some people out. And my father-in-law actually had a connection to a small engraving business here in Utah County. And he's like, well, why don't you come in here and help us with our search engine optimization? So we found out at the time that we were able to get a hold of the domain nametags.com. This was in 2000, and so somebody had been squatting it for about 4 years. We talked to them, brought them in a sort of a partnership, and we said, well, what if we took the domain nametags.com and let's do something with it? So the summer I graduated, we were heading off to law school. We were done with our contract. We were done with our housing. And in June, I think June 15th or so, we decided to launch nametags.com just for fun. And so I put all the metadata in it, I put all the meta tags, built the website. 2 months later, we had pushed through about $20,000 worth of revenue on the website. I didn't have any experience engraving. I didn't have any experience with name tags, but I had a bunch of clients that were saying, do you also offer this kind of name tag, and this kind of name tag, and this kind of name tag? So I went with my wife, and we said, well, we have a choice. We can close off this business and do the right thing, which is continue on this path that I'm supposed to go on and go to law school, or we can just put off law school for a year. So what did we do? We decided, Let's defer law school for 1 year and let's try our hand at business. And that's what we did. Now, I told you I had this great support network. It wasn't that great when I made that decision. In fact, I had interventions. I had my grandmother calling, my aunt, my wife's family said, like, they were more concerned about, well, what are we going to tell all of our friends? You're not an attorney anymore, how are we going to brag about you? And I said, yeah, I guess I'm just an engraver. Like, that's just what I do now. Well, as time went on, we continued to expand the business. And once you get into engraving and you get into name tags, you have to do all sorts of name tags. You have to start making ID tags. A couple of foundational principles that we started with, we did everything same day. And we did everything same day, not necessarily because it was great customer service, but because I didn't want to go home at the end of the day with a bunch of outstanding orders. And so it helped me sleep better at night if we shipped everything out that came in. I just couldn't sleep knowing that orders were coming in the afternoon, and I was going to wake up tomorrow morning, and there was just going to be a ton of work to do. I just wanted to get the work knocked out. So we sort of forced ourselves to figure out, how do we keep everything same day? Well, name tags soon expanded into ID cards and digitally printed name tags and photo IDs, which then expanded into lanyards and badge holders, which then forced us to get digital printing equipment, which then forced us to get screen printing equipment. And when you get screen printing equipment, you might as well add t-shirts and hoodies and shirts. And when you get shirts and hoodies, you might as well add embroidery. And when you're doing all that anyway, you might as well add signs and banners and billboards and all types of things. So fast forward about 10 years, and we were doing probably 10 million, I think, 8 to 10 million a year in revenue at that point, or maybe that was only 6 years later. But we decided, well, we have to change our name because it's no good to be nametags.com or the name tag source or one of the other 50 domain names that everybody did back in the early 2000s. So we changed our name to Namify. And what we realized is that if you're at Namify, you give us your logo, and we'll just take care of the rest. That's it. And we became more than just a manufacturing firm. We actually started getting into digital advertising and helping people with campaigns and helping people build their brands. And in fact, that was one of our first major pivots that we had to do, is we had to realize we've got to make a change here because we're not just known as a name tag company, we do other things as well. So the reason why I share this is because this is my approach to validation. This is what worked for us. When we had to validate, we had to figure out, do we go into the lanyard market? Do we go into the badge holder market? Do we go into conferences, trade shows, t-shirts? All these markets were saturated. We had to figure out how to validate. So to do this, I want to get some volunteers up here so we can role play a little bit. I think you'll be on a YouTube video. It'll be really cool. You can talk about it later. So do I have some volunteers to help me validate? Don't be shy. Yeah, come on down. Come on down. And if you want, if you stand right here, and then I'll kind of bring you up on stage as we go. Okay? Oh, Tanner, what a guy. Okay, the first step of validation. First step of validation is me, right? And the reason why I say me, this is the first step when you validate the business, because I think it's a good idea. And why do I think it's a good idea? Because I just do. Okay? We're going to go through different steps about how to properly validate a business. And this may seem a little bit silly, but I think it's important, and I think there's some good lessons to learn. Okay, so the first step is me. I think my business is great. Why? Because I thought of the name. There are about 400 steps to run a business. Most people come up with the idea, the name, step 12, and then step 400, launch. Right? Sounds pretty good? And maybe I'll digress for a minute. 525,000 businesses are registered every month in the United States. Can you believe that? So over 6 million businesses. 45,000 of those last year, 45,000 of the 6 million were angel funded. Means they had help. 4,000 of them, or about 4,500 of them, were actually venture funded, meaning they took more than $1 million, somewhere in the $1 million, $5 million, maybe $10 million. Usually they were an innovation arm of an already existing company or fund. Of the 4,000 venture funded and the 45,000 angel funded, half of those failed. Do you know what happened to the other 6 million that were out there? Maybe I'll let you do the research. But it's in the high 90s of ones that failed. So think about that for a minute. And a lot of times we think, no, business is booming, business is great. No, you could name the 10 cool businesses of last year. But out of 6 million, you can really only sit there and name those, 5 or 10 that you think about. So everybody starts a business. Why? Because of this concept right here. Me. I think that I can do a business. And there's 6 million other people like me that say, I can do a business and I can do a great job. And they sit around the dinner table and they say, what would be a cool idea? Right? Everybody knows that. Everybody's heard that person that says this would be a cool idea. Everybody has an idea that's out there. And then some people take it to this step, which is me. I'm going to validate it. I now have a name for my business. And what is it that you do with your business? Well, here's the name. And this is what we're trying to do. So here we go. Me. Number 2, my loved one. This is my cousin. This is my cousin, Eddie. Eddie, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
So, Eddie, I'm starting a business. What do you think of my business? Tell me you love it.
I love it.
You love it?
I don't know what it is, but I love it.
I know. Why do you love it?
Because I love you.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're cousins, right? So of course Eddie loves me. All right? So something just happened there. I took my first step in business validation where I said, I think the business is great. And now Eddie thinks the business is great. So we're doing a great job here. Tell me your name.
Matthew.
A little different than Eddie, right? So Matthew says that the business is great. So thanks for being my loved one. Come on over. There's 2 of us now up here with the business.
You want me to give her the mic?
Please. Yeah. This is one of my interested friends. Tell me your name.
Janae.
Janae. So this is Janae, you guys. Janae and I actually went to high school together, and we were in ASB together. We were student leadership, and we put on a lot of events and everything. So Janae, I'm starting a business.
That's so cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? It's awesome. So what do you think? I'm actually selling clicker remotes. I import these from China. I bring them in on the container load. They only cost me about $4, and I sell them for $10. What do you think?
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, you guys would totally buy these. I mean, everybody uses clickers,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I've got it. This is a great business. Okay, Janae, Matthew, we're good?
Dan.
Dan. Let's see who Dan is. Oh, okay, here we go. Now we're getting kind of serious here.
Dream big, brother.
Yeah.
I got some mentors I can hook you up with.
You know who that sounded like? You know exactly who that sounded like. They got you down. This is good. That's why we have a director here. Okay, something changes here with professors and leaders, right? Because they still love you a lot, but then they have this sort of moral obligation all of a sudden, right? So when you go to your professor, what happens? How many of you have been to a professor and you left thinking like, that person probably didn't love me as much as I thought they would love me when you went in? You go in with your idea, right? I see this all the time. Students come in, they pitch, and they say, watch this. Let's go to my mission president. My mission president is great. He will totally invest in this. They walk in, I go with them, they pitch to their mission president. The mission president says, well, good luck, elder. You'll be great on that. And then they walk away. And I say, so what happened? I don't know. My mission president always liked me as a missionary. Like, I don't know why he wouldn't invest, all right? This is that next level validation. So, tell me something that I need to hear that may be hard to hear. Here's my clicker business. What do you think?
They're cheap.
Wow. They're cheap. Okay? That's excellent, Professor. Thank you.
That's why I have a PhD.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So here's a point. Here's a point. Now I have an opportunity as an entrepreneur. What's my next step? You said change something? Good. What's the next step? We're going to change something? What are we going to do? We're going to validate it. Yeah, exactly. So what am I going to say? Professor, so tell me your thoughts. What's your experience with why you think this is cheap?
Because I have a better clicker that does 20 better functions, and we already get them from the university.
Okay, so you have a better clicker. So from his personal experience, he says there are better clickers out there that have more functions. So let me ask you a different way. So if I could figure out a way to maybe make this a little heavier, have it be a little softer, maybe put some purple suede on it. You know?
I like that.
And then add 21 features on it. At what point do you think you might be interested in checking one of these out?
It depends what features.
So if I took the 20 features that you have, and I added one more, which of course is the purple suede, the differentiator, Could I have you test one of these out for me?
I would test it.
Okay, you test out, and would you give me your honest feedback?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. See where we're getting somewhere? Now my cousin here, he's already talked about me on Facebook, right? He already just posted a bunch of stuff, and he's like, wow, you should see Bryan's clickers. This is my brother-in-law's cousin's uncle from his mission, and he has awesome clickers. Please share, right? We see that all the time. Like, this is my so-and-so's, business. And me, I'm feeling validated. Why? Because I got 22 likes. 22 likes, 4 shares, and who are the shares from? Well, Janae shared, obviously. Professor didn't share. I still can't trust him yet. I sent him my idea, and he's not jumping all over Facebook. Okay? Let's find out. Next, you're my competition. You're the guy that the professor likes. So tell me what's going on. What do you think of my clicker business?
It's kind of big. Mine's ergonomic. It just fits right into my hand. It's really comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a little clunky, right? I try to put it on my ear like a pencil. It just doesn't work the same.
Nope.
It doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, mine's got a clip.
You've got a clip?
Magnetic. Even.
A magnetic clip. Even better, right? I don't do magnets because of the pacemakers. Yeah, that's why I don't do magnets, right? I share that because that's a natural tendency as I watch young entrepreneurs go in and they leave and they're like, what was that guy's problem? Like the magnet? Like who used a magnet, right? But you kind of have to say to the competition, like, that's pretty slick, right? Did you have something, Chris? Oh, I thought you were going to plug a magnet. Oh, it's up.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I was actually thinking how we could add a magnet.
Okay, good. We started manufacturing name tag magnets back in 2005, I think. Just on a whim one night, we're like, we don't see any good name tag magnets that are out there. So we started making this. How many of you had a green magnet on your mission? See, Scott? Look at that. Oh. So the green magnet. So you want to hear the history of the green magnet? We actually called it the green magnet because we couldn't come up with a name. Like we were coming at the top name was Mag-It. Maggot. And then we sat there, we're like, that doesn't work. And everything with mag in it just sounded awful at the time. So we said like, well, maybe we could have a dual purpose name, right? If we sell these magnets, people will save more green. So we'll call it the green magnet, and let's color it green to be different. And in fact, every other magnet in the industry, from my competitor here, was black and blue. So we sent out our first advertisements that said, are you tired of being bruised in black and blue by your competitors? Are you tired of paying these high prices for magnets? It was cheesy, wasn't it? Looking back on it. We sent out, and what did we do? We stayed up all night and we scraped websites for addresses so we could send postcards to them that said, stop getting bruised by your current supplier, order from Namify and save some green and order the new green magnet. And you know how we knew we were successful? Not only did we start selling millions of them, but you know how we knew we were successful? Because the largest competitor in the industry in the next year put a one-page ad in their catalog that said, if quality isn't an issue, and if you don't care about longevity, then we also offer a green magnet. They burned us pretty good. But we took that as we've now been validated. Like our magnet actually means something. So you've got to look at your competition as well. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, and what I'm saying is, when you look at your competitors, some people will say, hey, I'm starting a business. And what's one of the questions? Does the idea already exist? Is it out there? And I think sometimes that's good for market validation. So sometimes that can be a good thing. Sometimes it can be a bad thing because the market can be totally saturated. And if it's that point, then you sort of pivot and you say, well, how do I differentiate? Okay? So from a competition standpoint, what happens when I gather all the feedback from the professor, I stop talking to Janae and Matthew because they're not really helping my business, but I love them to death, right? They're really good friends, but from a business standpoint, they're always going to say the same thing, which is, what?
We love you.
Yeah. You love me. It's so cool, yeah, right? Now, I'm being funny with this, but next time you go and pitch your business to your friend, and they say, wow, that's so cool, I want you to remember this moment. Okay, remember, and be careful, and say, what's cool about it? You tell me. I don't know, I can just tell you're really excited about it. You know, and that's really good. Okay, So when the competition, when you start collecting data, you start collecting information, I need a 5th volunteer. Come on, free swag. Here we go, one more. He's coming down. That guy's giving it all. He's giving it 100. Okay, good. We must be using one of my clickers. I keep clicking here. Okay, so I now have my minimum viable product. It's my new, prototype. It's purple. It's purple. It's got suede. It's got 21 features. It's ergonomic. It's got the magnet, and of course, it connects to my app. Right? Because everything has to be connected today, right? So I can pre-program all of my features. It has my GUI, my interface right here matches exactly this, and I can program certain buttons on here at any time. So now I've got this minimum viable product, and I take it out to the marketplace, okay? And I take it out to the marketplace, and I start talking to the first customer that's going to take it, the 10th customer that's going to take it, and my 10,000th customer. Okay, because ultimately that's where you want to get it. We also have a tendency at times where we will end up putting ourselves in situations where we pick the clients that we try and market to. And we say, let me pick these clients. And we pick clients like Matthew and Janae, people that have been with us for 10 years. And we say, hey, check this out. This is a really cool thing. Okay? How do we do this? How do we put this together? So we need to be careful when we're going through our validation process. We need to make sure we're validating at the right places. If somebody's starting to critique, if somebody's starting to ask us questions, we need to go through and we need to ask them questions back and continue. So can you guys clap for this crew? And we'll let them do it back down. Thanks. And grab a water bottle or grab a water bottle or something cool. Chris will help you out. Okay. Final points here, and I'll throw these up here for you. And we'll end on this. I'm not the type that's going to go through, and we're not going to spend another hour on these scriptures, but let me run through the spiritual side of this. So take a snapshot of it or remember it. One of the first scriptures that resonated with me is in Mosiah chapter 2. It was the first time as a business person that I had seen the difference between bless and prosper. I had seen it as a missionary, I'd seen it as a youth, but it made it made a deeper impact on me, the difference between being blessed and being prospered. And it had to do with obedience to the commandments, and it had to do with being obedient to a number of different statutes. I also started reading about prosperity in Alma, chapters 1 through 4. You see a cycle. It's about a 50-year cycle. They start up their business. They get going. By year 8, things are going really well. By year 50, they've completely fallen apart. And then you could fill in the blanks in between there. The field is ripe. Doctrine and Covenants 38, 17 through 20. The Lord explains, I've got this whole earth for you. You can do whatever you want with it. We get caught up too often in the billion-dollar ideas. Those are great ideas. They're wonderful. They're out there. I've had a lot of friends that have lost a lot to try and go for those billion-dollar ideas. And I've got a few friends that have made the billion-dollar idea. And they're great people. A lot of that has to do with the work that we put in, the opportunities that we take, all of the decisions that we make. So 2 Nephi 5 talks about this. The Lord will bless you and prosper you. And you see a pattern in there. And he says, they were prospered in the land. And Nephi says, yeah, we were prospered. We did well because, and then he goes through and starts outlining some things. We planted seeds. We started harvesting. We were hunting. We were growing. We were building. That's how you gain prosperity. Okay? The Lord will bless you and he will prosper you in your ventures. But you have to put in the work. You have to put in the effort. You have to validate ideas. You have to be able to understand that it's going to take time. And you can speed up time. You want to launch your business in the next year? You can. You want to launch it in the next 3 hours? Come talk to me. Let's go launch another business in 3 hours. Okay? It's all about time. It doesn't take that long to put something together. It takes time and it takes effort. Closing slide. I'll leave you with this thought. I came here and lectured a few years ago about people that trust in the arm of the flesh versus trusting in the arm of the Lord, where they get spiritual promptings and spiritual impressions, and then they decide to go check it with their friends and say, hey, the Lord's telling me that I should step to the right. What do you think, friends? And the friends say, well, that sounds scary. That sounds crazy. Okay, I had that personal experience. Why would you drop law school? That sounds crazy. I don't know. I just feel this impression that I should do it. Well, that's crazy. So the Lord was telling me one thing and was inspiring my wife and me to step on one path, and all of my friends were telling me another. That helped me to understand being careful to trust in the arm of the flesh and trust in the arm of the Lord. So I say this, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God's. You'll go through your business models. You do have to work on those things of the world. You do have to work on those principles and business principles and entrepreneurship modeling and all these things that are out there. But you still have to remember that the Lord will inspire you by doing what's right. He will bless you and He will prosper you in all that you do. Thank you guys. You've been great.